Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about the world building of Sherrilyn Kenyon's Dark Hunter series. So remember to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and let's begin. So, Sherrilyn Kenyon's Dark Hunter series is the only extended series of romance books that I've ever read. It's really the only romance books I've ever read. And the reason why I read them is because the world building hooked me. Like, the world building is so well done and so interesting, and the lore that she creates is so captivating that I basically had to keep reading any of the books in the series in order to get more crumbs of the world that she created. So it really pretty much pulled me through it. I kind of fell off after a while and she kept going with books, so there's probably even more expansion to the world than I even know now. But in this video, I want to give basically a brief description of the way the world building works and how she used ancient Greek myths and myths like Atlantis and everything like that to spin off all the basically tropish mythical creatures like vampires and werewolves and gods and fairies and all this kind of stuff. So I want to basically give a decent little description of that in honor of Valentine's Day. So let's begin. So the Sherrilyn Kenyon Dark Hunter series is a romance series in which pretty much every book in the series you come in contact with a human woman and some sort of supernatural male. They end up crossing paths and striking up some sort of a relationship, and there's always something that kind of roadblocks them. There's either the fact that the guy is a werewolf, or the woman is some kind of ancient hunter of demons and stuff, or just, human and supernatural person not supposed to be together, or one's an ancient god and one's a human. So it's always some sort of opposite attract type of, will they, won't they, or they shouldn't be together, or there's always some sort of conflict that always drives the story. But the world in which they live is the true gem of these stories, in my opinion. So Sherrilyn used the ancient myths of the Greek region to basically spin off all of her characters. So in ancient Greece, in the time before man, or at the dawn of man, after Zeus created man, he basically was doing regular stuff. Prometheus and all of that stuff kind of happened, and then Apollo basically was jealous and arrogant and was saying that humankind was an inferior creation for Zeus and he should have done a better job and not make humans as flawed as he did. So as a challenge, Apollo decides to create what he calls Apollites and make them all blonde, all look basically like him, all blonde and almost 7 feet tall, and they have psychic powers and they're all really physically strong and stuff. And he basically does this as a, thumb up the nose to Zeus, like, I'm a better creator than you and all of this kind of stuff. And Zeus was really pissed about it, so he banishes all these people from the lands of Greece, and they have to go to Atlantis, where the ancient gods of that country, of Atlantis, have welcomed them and offered them protection. So while they're there is a bunch of, there's time goes by and there's societies crop up and all this stuff, so they basically become the Atlanteans, and they're basically a separate race of people. And over time, there's wars between Athens and Atlantis, and there's, constant conflict. The Apollites decide to, in an act of war, go and assassinate Apollo's consort, the human princess of one of the Greek city-states. So when they go and kill her, she's 27, and they basically rip her apart. So as a result, Apollo curses all the Apollites for this action. So they are cursed to die at 27, the same age his mistress was, and they're cursed to, within that day, within the 24-hour period, they basically age to dust, and that's how they die at 27. They age to dust. And because of the way they savagely brutalized her, he curse them with animal issues where they have to drink blood from each other. Like, they can only survive off the blood of each other. And because he's Apollo, the sun god, he banishes them from his realm, so they can no longer be in sunlight. They go in sunlight, they burn up and die. So he's given them all the tropes of vampirism. They have fangs and stuff because they drink blood from each other. They can't go in sunlight because they'll burn and die. And they're immortal they're immortal for a totally different reason. But because it expands in and of itself, and they have these abilities. So they're basically psychic, telekinetic, blonde vampires that are evil. But after the curse, the one of the goddesses of Atlantis takes pity on these people and shows them how to consume human souls. So they then, after that, start to become classic vampires, and they prey on humans, drink their blood until they die, and then consume their souls, which elongates their lives so that they can live past 28 or 27. So that's kind of how she sets up her evil vampire situation. So they are cursed creations of Apollo who were taught by a Atlantean goddess how to steal human souls. To me, that's intriguing enough to get me to read pretty much anything. If that's the description of the world building, I'm already in. So it gets even better from there. So from there, that basically that whole situation kind of gets put off to the side, right? It kind of, it is what it is, and it's its own situation growing. But she also introduces, actually, before I even get to this next part, let me explain the other half, because these evil vampires have a coin flip situation. So the sister of Apollo, Artemis, there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of stuff going on. I'm gonna leave that vague because it's a spoiler for one of the books. But based on everything that's going on, her and Apollo aren't friends. They aren't allies. They are enemies. So she, through a bunch of convoluted stuff that happens, she basically sets up a situation with ancient Greek soldiers who are tasked with going to kill those evil vampire things called daemons. So for various reasons, Artemis wants all the daemons to be destroyed. So she sets up this situation where any Greek soldier, like on their death, if they die based on the betrayal, then their soul will scream out for vengeance, and she will come to them, and they can sell their soul to her, and she will give them immortality and powers and basically unleash them on the daemons. But because Sherrilyn wanted to, kind of keep the vampire thing, the nature of their transformation after she takes their soul is they can't go in sunlight, they have fangs, and they get abilities, but they don't have a blood drinking issue, and they are very hard to kill, just like the daemons. So there's good vampires and there's bad vampires. One drinks the blood of humans and steals their souls, and the other saves human souls by killing the daemons. So that's a really cool dynamic for good vampires versus bad vampires. And I love Atlantis. That's one of my favorite myths in existence. So the idea that she used the nature of Atlantis, mixed it with Greek gods, and then she created gods for Atlantis and stuff, and it's just so fun, and it's really cool, and the expansion of it just goes and goes and goes and goes. And that brings me to the next part. So if you have a vampire story, it's only a matter of time before you bring in werewolves. So the way she creates her werewolves, she doesn't just have werewolves. She has full, like a species of were creatures. They're called were hunters. And the way this works, it's also spun off of classic Greek myths. So in ancient Greece, King Lycaon, a Apollyte woman, and on her 27th birthday, she aged and died. And because of this, he kind of realized it would happen to their children too, his two sons. And as a result, he basically almost kind of lost his mind for fear of losing his children. He spliced together all the magics he knew, along with all the ancient science and stuff that he knew, and more or less created two races. So he somehow created, like, from two sons, he got four creatures. So the creatures he used to splice together with his sons to keep them alive was a wolf and a dragon. So one son is a part were-dragon creature, and the other is a werewolf creature. And as a result of the magic, it split them into two species. So there is what's called an Arcadian dragon and a Categoria dragon. So a Categoria is a animal that has the ability to turn into a human. So it has the heart of an animal, but the ability to shift into a human. And an Arcadian has the heart of a human with the ability to turn into an animal. So their base form is human and they become animal. Categoria base form is animal and they become human. So he creates four creatures accidentally. So that kind of spins off. And as a result, so because the use of magic and everything like that, he creates this entirely new species that has their own magic and their own rules. So it circumvents Apollo's curse. So they can live, their default lifespan is hundreds and hundreds of years. So they don't have to worry about the 27 years at all. But Apollo was so pissed off that they did this because he's also the god of curses. He cursed their entire race to basically be at war with each other forever. So the Arcadians and the Categoria are always at war. So the ones that are base form humans are always trying to kill the ones that are base form animals and vice versa. So there's never peace between them. But he used multiple different species, different animals to create them. So it kind of goes further and further. So there's so there's werewolves, were-dragons, were-jackals, were-dragons, and just a bunch of different creatures. So she has the full gambit of shapeshifters, and it all spins off of this awesome Greek mythology, which I love, and it just makes it that much more fun. So that's basically how she creates vampires and were creatures. And I love it because it spins off of all the mythology and stuff that I love. And she continues to expand it even further as time goes on from the ancient timeline up forward. Like all the gods are real. Like the Celtic pantheon is real, the Egyptian pantheon is real. All of the pantheons are real, and all of their histories basically reflect the way those religions kind of rose and died throughout history. So like the Celtic gods, like they're still around, but they're much weaker because they don't have worship and stuff. So they're just kind of having little plans and they're trying to do stuff. So there's a bunch of gods running around doing stuff. There's vampire creatures running around killing people. There's other vampire creatures running around killing those vampire creatures. There's were creatures with all kinds of powers that are trying to just mundanely live human lives and stuff while dealing with all the other people because of the nature of the werehunters. They are like the favorite snack of the daemon, so they try to steal their souls so they can get their powers and stuff. So the were creatures are basically just trying to live their lives and deal with the fact that their cousins, their brothers, their literal, relative species is always going to try to kill them because they're always going to try to kill them because they're cursed. So it creates this really cool dynamic just on that level, and it just goes and goes and goes. So like how the Celtic pantheon, basically the Celtic culture is responsible for like what we know about fairies and things like that, and like the fae and all of that, like the true stuff, not just the Tinkerbell like fairies, but like the old stuff. And she uses that to great effect and like pull those characters forward and have them inform other characters. And because of all this rich history she can pull from, all the Dark Hunter characters are ancient warriors from different cultures and stuff, so they have really interesting backgrounds. Some are like Celtic warriors, some are Greek generals, and some are like slaves from ancient Greece or anywhere else, and some are like ancient French warriors and things. So it's really cool, and it's a great diverse cast, and they all like live hundreds of years and stuff, so they all have a wealth of experience and just great dynamic kind of stuff. And she's really good at writing these characters with these long backstories, so it makes it just that much more fun to actually read. But what has to be my absolute favorite thing in her world building and her lore creation is her, what I consider to be her linchpin character of Acheron. Acheron is the leader of the Dark Hunters. He is the leader of the, the vampire type creatures that got to stop the evil vampire type creatures. And you go through multiple books without really knowing anything about him until we get his book finally, which is called Acheron, appropriate. So major spoilers for Acheron. So I call Acheron the linchpin character because he's the leader of the Dark Hunters, and he is kind of the kickoff point to a lot of the events that permeate the background of the stories. So Acheron was born to the Atlantean goddess Apollymi. He was born of, the Zeus and Hera of Atlantis. Their names are Apollymi and Archon. I had to think about that. So Apollymi and Archon, like he's the child of them, so he's supposed to be the next ruler of the Atlantean pantheon. But because there's a bunch of stuff, right? So the Greek fates are actually the daughters of the king of the Atlantean pantheon. So he was cheating on his wife, and she kind of hates him because of that. But now, like the fates kind of are over at Atlantis and stuff. So when Acheron is born, they make a prophecy and declare him the end of all the Atlantean gods. He's going to be responsible for their total destruction. And as a result, everybody's like, kill the baby. Like, just kill the baby and all this stuff. So she's like, no, she ain't having none of that. It's her first child, and her husband like cheated on her and all this stuff. So she's not, dealing with that. And she spirits him away to the human world and block all his powers. So he grows up as a human in ancient Greece. And like it has such a terrible life and all this kind of stuff that goes on that I don't want to get into direct spoilers for. But he has a not so awesome life until he's 21 and murdered, and then comes back to life because he's a god. And it creates all of these issues because the fates accidentally gave him the ability to end the world. So he is he is what they said, but he is only what they said because they said it. So what also happens, which is another spoiler, but it's a weird kind of spoiler, non-spoiler kind of thing. The at least that's kind of how I see it. If it's considered a spoiler, apologies. But the lore that Sherrilyn creates goes all the way up to the destruction of Atlantis, which I love because the goddess Apollymi's son Acheron was killed. She loses her mind and gets pissed at all of Atlantis and literally sinks Atlantis. So the reason for Atlantis being gone is because they treated a god terribly, and a goddess was like, "You're all done with your living," and wiped the entire island out. So I think it's really trippy and really, really cool. Like I love that kind of deep lore. I love everything about Atlantis. I for like a long time I also wanted to be like a marine biologist so I can go and look for Atlantis. So it's like all kinds of stuff. Like it wraps into like my personal taste and things that I really like. So I really, really dig it. I'm going to try to wrap this up here because I don't want to spoil much more, because I think I do want to review some of the books in the series. So let me know in the comments down below if you'd be interested for some more reviews for the Dark Hunter series. But let me close up by saying I think this is some of the best and most expansive world building I've ever seen in any sort of romance series. Like I'll read the description of other romance stories and stuff like that, and it just feels kind of boring. But like this, the way she expands it and pulls the lore and make all this like world building like just so much fun, like it like gives it a major thumbs up. And the Dark Hunter Werehunter series is not even her only story. She has the Lords of Avalon, which is like King Arthur level mythology and stuff, and that goes, I think I haven't read any of those, but I think they mostly take place in that time frame, like King Arthur time area. And she has the Dead Man's Curse, I believe it's called. So that's like a pirate series. She has pirates doing similar kind of stuff and pirate lore and all that. And then she has The League, which takes place in space in the far future. It's a full sci-fi series and similar kind of thing. I think it's supposed to be a far future of the Dark Hunter timeline, but it's not really clear. And I haven't read too much of it, so I can't say for sure. But her use of like lore, like ancient mythology, and just expanding that to create the lore and the world building for her stories is so well done. And despite the fact that every story is really just a pairing off of characters that have their own romance story, the world building and the lore creates the background story. So every characters that she set up in her books, they have their own little story, but there's this big background event that's going on that they often end up getting swept up into. So she's telling this long sweeping story through all these multiple books, but it's one kind of consistent story. And I have no idea how long it's going to take to get to the end of it, or if she's gotten to the end of it and I just fell off the train or not. But I'd be interested to check it out, so I'll probably do some research on that and get back to you, I guess. So what are some romance stories that got some good world building that you can think of? Let me know in the comments down below. And remember to follow me on Twitter so that you can get updates on videos that are coming up. And with that being said, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and I will talk to you all next time. Peace.